We tend to look for love, for acceptance, for recognition in all the wrong places, when all along all we have to do is look for Jesus. Hello, my name's Irenio Alvarado. I'm 40 years old. I'm from Mercedes, Texas. When I was born, my father was gone. My mother had my older brother. She worked a lot, so my grandmother took over me. She raised me with her children, which were my uncles. My two uncles were the ones that influenced me, one to fighting and the other one to doing art. My uncle Ruben, he was the fighter. He was my first role model. I would always follow him everywhere. And that one day I followed him to the back of the property, into a Ninja Turtle van that my grandfather had back in the backyard. And so I followed him in there, and he allowed me to try out marijuana for the first time. That was my Uncle Ruben. A few years later after that, he went to Michigan and never came back. He's been in prison for 30 years since. Coming up under my uncles, the thing to me was I was always trying to be cool with the older kids, and I was always running with the older kids. So a lot of my influence came from older kids, which by the time I was 14, I was already in juvenile. I was already part of a gang. My uncle, who went to prison, right, and never came back, and still in prison, you know, left me heartbroken. Like, I was really close to him, and losing him was, I felt like I needed somebody else. Like I felt alone, you know, and me seeking other other father figures or other role models, you know, only led me to look for them in a place where it was full of darkness, you know, in the streets, right? And being a part of that gave me the recognition that I was looking for, although it was negative recognition from people that weren't good or right, or weren't in a positive environment, you know. And I chose to follow that. I chose to follow that lifestyle. I chose to become about the streets. I chose to become about the drugs. I chose to do what my uncles had already showed me how to do. Me looking and seeking for that acceptance and that recognition, I want to do that what they did, but even better, so that I can get their recognition. And so I did, and by doing that, I lost myself. I got way in too deep in the streets. I got way in too deep in the business, which led me to pick up felonies at a very young age. Once I picked up those felonies, it was just out of control for me. I kept on believing that the criminal lifestyle, the gang activities, the drugs were a part of me. It was what set me free, but not knowing that it was only getting me deeper and deeper into a pit that I was not going to be able to come out of on my own. First time I went to prison, the first offer I got was 99 years. Nobody expected me to go home. But God, out of all those 99, I only had to do 5 years. The second time I went down to prison, I went down for 7 years. Caught 3 more years on top of that. I was doing bad. I was still doing drugs. I was still selling drugs. I was still doing everything you can imagine of me doing out in the world. I was doing it in prison. Except when God came around, he touched me in a way that little by little I just started shedding, and just started leaving little of the old man behind, until finally a lot of it was gone. A lot of me was gone. I finally, out of nowhere, I get called in for parole, and I get my first parole. But I still had the other 3 years to do. Well, God had another plan, because after that first parole, I got re-eligible for parole again. And so I went down there and I got my second parole, which is not known, which is not heard of. And they can ask me all they want how that happened, and all I can say is God. That's all God. God is the one that does things. The God is the one that opens doors. God is the one that closes doors. God is the one that leads. God is the one that guides. And so through that, I just allowed myself to be changed. I allowed it to happen. I allowed Christ to move and the Spirit to just lead me through it all, through the rest of my prison time. I get out during COVID, everything's shut down. Uh, I don't have a chance to go to church. I don't have a chance to go to Bible study. Everything's shut down. So, needless to say, I fall back into using drugs. But the thing was, to me, it was like, as long as I'm not doing the things that I used to do as far as my lifestyle, I'm okay. I'm okay if I smoke this little thing. I'm okay if I drink this little beer, and it's not the case. That wasn't the case, because the more I used, the more I was separating myself from God. I was separating myself from Christ. The Spirit wasn't around no more because I was neglecting it. Being in Texas, having all this around me, just being in the same environment that got me into prison, it was just something that I wasn't ready for. And I guess God knew I wasn't ready for it either, because God, out of nowhere, I just get a phone call, and I'm offered this job. I'm offered this job in Oregon, right? And so I take it, not knowing that the doors that opened over here were just amazing. The people that I have met are amazing. The people that are now in my life are beautiful people. They're people that I've never even dealt with before, because the people that I used to deal with are people from the darkness. We tend to look for love, for acceptance, for recognition in all the wrong places, when all along all we have to do is look for Jesus, because Jesus is the one and only one that can give us the peace of mind, the peace in our hearts, that can allow us to live the life that we need to live in order to fulfill our purpose. And our purpose has to be in praising God and following Jesus, in pushing and furthering the gospel. Through our walk, we're gonna stumble, we're gonna fall. I have. But Christ is always there. Once he comes into your life, once you allow him into your life, he will never go. I allowed him into my life, and he's just did a whole 360 in it. He took me out of my old environment and put me into a new environment. He got me away from the old people I used to deal with and put me in the midst of new people that I pray with now. He got me out of the drug dealing and wanting to get rich off that easy way, and put me in a good job that I would have never had if it wasn't for him. Like, God has just been showing up, and all I've been doing is allowing it to happen, allowing him to happen, allowing him to just fill me up and take over my life, because the way I was living before only was getting me to the same place, to the same dark corner, to the same cell, to the same prison. And I got tired of that. And only God knows where I would have ended up if I wouldn't have chose Christ. And so being in Christ is just another whole different strength in its own. Being with Christ gives you the strength that you need, that you never had. And that's what he's given to me. He's given me another opportunity at life. I left my old gang and became a Christian. I used to fight for the wrong things, but now I fight for God. My fight ain't with flesh. My fight is spiritual now. And so it's important that I stay prayed up. And it's important that I keep praising God, because if it wasn't for God, none of this would be for me. I wouldn't be in the places that I am. I wouldn't be around people that I am. I'm blessed. I'm blessed.